Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Dr. Tony Bates is a clinical psychologist with 30 years experience in the area. He's a founding director of Headstrong, the National Centre for Youth Mental Health. He's an Irish Times columnist, an author. You've probably heard him on the radio or seen him on TV. He's certainly a pioneer in the area of mental health reform. He's also a pioneer in the area of mindfulness. And it's a great honor to have him here tonight. So can we please give him a big welcome? Thank you.
Thank you. This is truly the most enjoyable event I've been at this year. Walking along the narrow back roads of County Kildare a few nights before Christmas, darkness surrounded us on every side. The force was strong. Dense black clouds eclipsed the moon and the stars and any light they might have provided. My friend Michael had thankfully brought a small torch with him, which lit a path for us a few feet ahead. It saved us from tripping into potholes and veering off into muddy puddles. But even though the torch lit a path through the darkness, it didn't take away the darkness. It simply allowed us to move through it. I thought about many people I've known in my life, including myself, who have ended up lost in some dark place inside themselves, where it was hard to see the way forward. And I asked myself, what might be the equivalent of that torch for someone caught up in mental darkness? I think more than anything else, it's being in touch with our basic goodness. Being able to trust that there is in us, that there is more to us than our pain, an inner strength, an inner beauty that nothing can deface or destroy. It's a struggle at the best of times to believe in our own, to believe in and stay in touch with our own true nature, that beauty within. But when we're distressed, it's even more difficult. We begin to second guess its very existence. I'm not like other people. I'm a complete failure. I'm a bad person. We not only lose touch with our own goodness, we deny that it's even there. In the grip of some personal darkness, we need someone to hold the light for us, to look at us when we feel unhinged, when we can only see black, and to remind us that we still have a beating heart. That's what brings us alive. That's what gives us back the hope and the energy to face whatever darkness may be there. Faith in every religious tradition, including that which is embodied in this awesome cathedral, is not faith in some abstract thing or idea. It's a belief in the goodness, the beauty of every human person. An artist's gift comes from being able to touch that beauty, that light in themselves and express it. When artists perform and we enjoy what they do, it is simply the light in them connecting with the light in us. I worked for 25 years in a psychiatric hospital just a mile down the road from here, with people who struggled hard to make sense of their lives and figure out who they were. That was just the staff. The so-called patients were people like you and me, whose lives, for whatever reason, weren't working for them, but with whom one could have a very honest conversation. I never cured a single person in that time, but through those conversations, many people righted themselves. I was constantly surprised to see how people were able to come back from appalling experiences and discover something beautiful to hold on to in themselves and in their lives. And when this happened, they seemed to become even more alive and kinder than they'd previously been. If there is a fault in our mental health system, and there are probably many, it's that all too often we only see and reinforce the darkness in people's lives and rarely see what is good and beautiful and strong in them. We're clever with our labels and often feel that when we've diagnosed what's wrong with someone, our work is done. Today begins Headstrong's 10th anniversary year. For many young people I've listened to, being told that the distress they're experiencing, whatever form it takes, being told that it reflects something wrong with them rather than a valid response to something that is happening or has happened in their lives, has left them feeling very confused and uneasy in their own skin. If they can't trust their emotional reactions to real and painful events in their lives, where does that leave them? I remember one man, after many years of repeated admissions to psychiatric hospital, and he was a very talented musician, he described his experience of care in this way. He said, "I came here for help because my shoelaces were broken and I wanted them fixed, and they took away my shoes." Of course, there are people who see the light in our mental health services and who bring healing to those in their care. And often we find that light in the most surprising of places, where we least expect it. One of the most enjoyable fixtures in the week when I worked in James's was a 1-hour group therapy session every Monday morning in the locked inpatient ward. Anyone who wanted to attend was welcome, regardless of their diagnosis or their mental state. The agenda was dead simple. I invited whoever showed up to answer 2 questions. What was it like to wake up in this hospital this morning? And what do I need? One particular morning, a very frightened, agitated man, I'll call him David, sat on the windowsill looking outside all through the meeting. He couldn't join in because there was a fully armed SWAT team on the roofs of the hospital complex, intent on blowing up all the plutonium in the X-ray department. And it was within his power to give the signal to either complete or call off this mission. So we couldn't really join in our agenda, our little get-together. I got that, and I thanked him for looking out for all of us. But as our meeting came to a close, I had an even bigger problem. A woman, well known to us over the years, whom I'll call Mary, had been an inpatient for 3 weeks now, and for all of that time, she'd never stopped crying. No one could get out of her why. Sitting there in our group, she was still crying. So I turned to David and said, "Look, I know you've got a lot on your plate, but I've got my own emergency going on down here. You see, it's Christmas week, and I just don't feel right sending Mary out of here in floods of tears. Can you help me, please?" David got down from the windowsill. He drew the group into a tight circle and instructed us to hold hands with one another. He looked straight across the room at Mary and he said to her, "Mary, I love you." And he repeated it a second time, "I love you." "You know why?" he continued. "Because when I was admitted and walked down the corridor, everyone looked away, but you didn't. You smiled at me. That meant a lot." Neither Mary nor David broke eye contact at any point during that interaction, but she did stop crying. 3 days later, she was discharged. After that session, she'd opened up to her doctor about what had happened in her life. She'd had a once-off sexual encounter with a neighbour, which left her feeling so ashamed, so bad, so guilty, that she couldn't admit it to anyone. All she could do was cry. When David spoke directly to her, he made her feel she wasn't all bad, and that there was good in her, and that allowed her to open up and face what had happened, rather than try to keep pushing it away. Where Mary saw only the darkness in herself, David, in spite of being in the grip of a wild hallucinogenic psychosis, saw beauty. He allowed her to feel the goodness in herself that had become eclipsed by shame and guilt, and that brought her back to life. In that moment, his love lit a path through her darkness. Thank you.